Oh, all right. So as tired as I am, and as tired as I know everybody out there in YouTube land is going to be, I do want to do power rankings before turning in for tonight. And if anybody wonders, like, why does he do them on Saturday nights? Because I want to make sure I'm ahead of everybody else. So all the publications, for the most part, do them Mondays and Tuesdays. So I do mine on Saturdays, so I'm ahead of the power rankings you'll see from TSN, Sportsnet, ESPN, and anywhere else. That's why I do it on Saturday nights. That's why I have damned myself to doing these on Saturday nights when I'm pretty darn tired. But that's okay, because then Sunday is usually a relatively easy day. And as I mentioned in the review, there is a belief that tomorrow night, with only 2 games, I could probably do a live stream on the main channel. And then on Monday for patrons, we have a show that we're going to be getting up and running this week. We'll see how that goes. That being said, let's go ahead and jump in with number 31, which is Detroit. Now, last week Detroit was 31, and I'm going to be honest, they never moved from 31 this week. They didn't. They just didn't. And I don't know that they're going to. I think I could probably just get one of those tattoo things and just tattoo it right to the board and not really have to worry about having to scratch it off without damaging the board. They look like they're at 31 for the season, and yet number 30 hasn't changed either, and that's the Senators. So the Senators and the Red Wings show that the Atlantic, well, you have some pretty good teams. You also have probably the 2 worst teams in the National Hockey League in the same division. And their records, both of them, are off to just disastrous starts. So anybody who's going to come in and say, oh, it's still early in the season, they can make the playoffs, ask a fan of theirs whether or not their teams can make the playoffs. Fans are honest at this point in the season where they're like, yeah, we're not going to make it. It's fine. It's okay. I've made peace with it. That being said, those are the 2 that are easy, right? Well, at 29, dropping 1 spot from last week is Minnesota. They're kind of easy to leave in the bottom row, too. For Minnesota, it was a matter of they kept losing, and the team that was 29th last week, which was Dallas, miracles have happened with Dallas. I don't know how long it continues, but Dallas is no longer in the bottom row, and maybe they won't go back there. There seems to be some cohesion going on there, which for Minnesota, protecting leads is an issue. Comebacks are a problem. There's problems everywhere. Their goaltending seems to be okay, but it's not spectacular. So for Minnesota, there's a lot of issues here that it's going to take a while for Bill Guerin to get all ironed out. It's not going to happen in one season. Number 28, dropping five spots from last week, San Jose. The bottom drops out for San Jose tonight. Last night against Winnipeg, I could kind of argue they shouldn't drop very much, but tonight against Vancouver, allowing a 5 spot. So if you're going to look at the shots and go, well, it was close in shots, right. So the goaltending is still a problem with San Jose. They end up in 28th. Now for the season, let's see, they're 24th, they were 28th here as well, so that equals a low for them. I should be looking at the high and low, but I'm not. So 31 is the lowest, of course, that you can get. 30, is that as high as Ottawa's gotten this year? No, 29 is the highest they've got. 29 is right about the average for Minnesota. And 28, that ties the low for the San Jose Sharks. Number 27, dropping 2 spots from last week, is Chicago. And there's some signs that they're coming out of it. Taves getting a goal tonight's important. But yeah, that's 27th, and that is the lowest they've been this season. And they scored on LA. So there's something to that, because at number 26, and they move up 1 spot from last week, LA is number 26. That is as high as they've been all season. The second time they've reached the number 26 spot. You got to feel pretty good about that. They can't get any higher up than that, though. They haven't been able to do so. So we've got Atlantic, Central, Pacific. The Metro, not showing up yet. Number 25, moving up 1 spot from last week, is a Metro Division team, New Jersey. They lost 2 in extra time, and then today they won. There are signs that New Jersey's turning it around, that they're ready to go to Blackwood full-time, and we'll see. We'll see if New Jersey can do that. They should have beat Tampa, so there are reasons to look at New Jersey right now and see optimistic future for the team in general, but again, I want to see more than just 1 win from them in a row. But that 1 win still, to me, pushed them ahead of teams that they might have otherwise been behind, those teams being Chicago and LA. Number 24, dropping 4 spots from last week, is Philadelphia. Now, on the upside, Giroux's waking up. The Konechny line looks really solid. Their goaltending, less so. Elliott has some pretty good games here and there. Is he a consistent starter? Probably not. Is Carter Hart putting up the kind of numbers they'd hope for this year? That's also a no. So for Philadelphia, they're at 24. They and New Jersey being in the Metro Division. Number 23, dropping 4 spots from last week, also a Metro Division team, and that is Columbus. And I like that John Tortorella is optimistic about things, that he's saying all the right things right now, because it just looks to me like Columbus is in for a long year. And maybe Tortorella on some level knows that. Maybe he's aware, all right, this is going to be a long year for us. I have to be as optimistic as possible. I have to change my focus. He has talked about how the team has to change the way they play hockey this year compared to last year because of the change in personnel. So he's saying all the right things, but they are falling back. When you look at the races right now for playoff spots, Columbus is sitting outside of one, and we'll see how long they sit outside of one, but right now that's where they're at. Number 22, moving up 7 spots from last week, Dallas. Now, Dallas moves up 7 spots because, let's be honest, moving up past these teams is relatively easy. The win they got over Montreal tonight I thought was the most impressive win of the wins they've had thus far. So they've won 6 out of 7. They're almost back to 500. And being in the Central, if you can get to 500, you've got a shot. You have definitely got a shot in the Central of making a playoff spot and making some noise. We'll see if they can continue this into next week. But right now, yep, they look pretty good. And as long as Bishop and Hudobin are putting up the kind of numbers they have over the last couple of weeks, that helps. It helps when your goaltenders aren't really allowing goals. Number 21, moving up 3 spots from last week, the New York Rangers. The Rangers are also showing signs of coming out of a funk they've been in. Hedl has been fantastic since returning from the American Hockey League, and Georgiev, I think, should be the starter by the end of this year. I think he'll be the starter by the time we reach the All-Star break, like full-time. He's the guy. No offense to Lundqvist or anything, but I think Georgiev is the better of the 2 goaltenders. We'll see if I'm right or not as the season goes on. Number 20, moving up 1 spot from last week. Winnipeg. They're above 500. They won back-to-back games. This is the second time they've won back-to-back games this year. It's faint praise. They've been up one, down one, up one, down one for the most part. And then last night, the win they got over San Jose, they probably shouldn't have got. And then tonight, the win over Vegas, it didn't look like they would get. So there's some good fortune here, and Hellebuck stole them a win last night, and now tonight they get one that they should have got, but they looked like they weren't going to get after the first period. Anyways, for Winnipeg, they're still, for me, one of those middle-of-the-pack teams that may end up surprising some people. So the Jets, for me, are 20th, but they're one of those teams that could absolutely move up in the coming week. That's why I'm wearing Jets, because I genuinely want them to do well. I think the more Canadian teams you have in the playoffs, the better things are for Rogers, which might make them stop firing people. If people watch the playoffs in Canada, maybe they'll stop letting people go because they're taking a bath on that contract. So, go Jets, go, I guess. All right, so, well, Jets fans are complaining about their standing. Let's move along to number 19. These guys move up 3 spots. I did a video this week on how I think they're going to get better, and I think Florida is in the process of starting to show that, yes, we are going to take advantage of teams beneath us. We are going to be one of the better teams. We are going to be in the playoffs. So, for Florida, the problem I had with them coming into this week was how often they seem to be getting points in overtime and shootouts, but not actually getting wins. And so I don't like rewarding teams that aren't actually winning games in regulation compared to teams that are. That being said, they won in regulation today. They won pretty easily. And for Florida, things seem to be getting better. So again, they move up the list. We'll see how much higher they move next week. I do anticipate them to continue moving up the list. Number 18. Dropping from number 17 last week is Montreal. The win over Vegas was great. And then they go into Dallas tonight, and they scored 1 goal. And there were some frustrations in that game, and we'll see where Montreal's at. But they seem to have some consistency issues as well. Should they have come back and beat Vegas? Is that a game Vegas should have won in regulation? Probably. I'm not going to penalize Montreal for that. I certainly didn't bump them down for that reason. But for Montreal, there's still some parts of their game that I think they're working on. And I'm still not sure if there's that big star forward there. Like, Domi has that potential. Gallagher totally is your 30-goal scorer, but that big star forward, we'll see. We'll see as we reach, the end of November, where we're at statistically and who's really putting up those numbers. And maybe Drouin can keep it up all year. We'll see. Number 17, dropping from number 11 spot last week, is Toronto. Now, I'm not in a panic because I haven't seen Toronto with Tavares back yet. What I've seen is Toronto without Tavares isn't anywhere near as good as Toronto with Tavares. They win the game over Philadelphia tonight in a shootout. Great and fine and dandy, but I think that there are 16 teams in the NHL that are playing better than they are right now. And so Toronto's taken that fall. And it's surprising for me because if you go back to my season preview, I'd expected them to be one of the better teams in the league. If you go back last year, I thought they'd be President's Trophy winners. I don't see any reason why Toronto can't. The one glaring issue they have is Tyson Barrie. And when I listening to the game tonight, watching the game tonight, and it's Marincin and Barrie playing together, I thought, what are they doing? Why are those two together? And again, I know there's depth issues and whatnot, but I would not have those two guys on the ice together. It's just not a thing. Number 16, moving up from last week's number 18 spot. So they're up 2 spots, is Calgary. And, for Toronto, that is the lowest they've been. For Montreal, that ties the lowest they've been. For Calgary, at 17, they move up. Or 16, they move up 2 spots from where they were last week. So they move up off that down. They're in a playoff spot. Teams behind them have played less games. Arizona being that team that really stands out as having played less games than they have. So in all likelihood, once all the games even out, Calgary could find themselves on the outside looking in. They need to get some consistent games put together. Maybe that win over the Blue Jackets tonight, the shutout win they got tonight, maybe that leads into something bigger tomorrow if they can go in and beat Washington, and then they've got a homestand after that. Now you've got something going, and Calgary can potentially build on it. Number 15, dropping from number 8 last week. So, funny thing. Last week I talked about how Tampa, they got it all together. All right, Tampa's getting it together. Tampa's going to be good. They're going to be fine. And then this week happened, and no, they're not going to be fine. In fact, they don't look anything like last year at all. And it's becoming an alarming trend. So all of the things that early on this year were seen as nitpicking, it's happening now. They're not getting the shots. They're not playing particularly well. Now they get a break to go overseas and get their game together. Or if they lose both games overseas, we're looking at a situation where Tampa could miss the playoffs. Like right now. And I know, like last year I talked about early in the year, and people are like, oh, you're crazy for talking about it already. Hey, if Tampa doesn't get it together, they'll slide further down in this next week. I could see Florida passing them. Florida fans would love that. I could see Florida passing them next week. And next thing you know, Tampa's trying to figure out what they're going to do. Because they've got a lot of money tied up in these guys. And if they're not able to get it done, how do you fix it? So then that's a whole new question for the Tampa Bay Lightning, if that's the case. Number 14, dropping from number 13 last week, Anaheim. They had an iffy week, but they did beat the Canucks in overtime in a game that John Gibson stole for them. As long as they have Gibson, and as long as he's playing the way he has the first month and a bit of the season, they should be a playoff team. Now, they go out in the first round. They go out quickly because they don't have the scoring. They don't have a lineup that scares anybody. But yeah, they should very well be a playoff team, and we could see 5 teams in the Pacific make the playoffs, which would be crazy. But right now, that's where it looks like it's going to be, that 5 in the Pacific and 3 in the Central could be the way things work out. Dallas could very well step up and go, nope, we're going to have 4 in each, but we'll see. For Anaheim, though, decent week, and they stay on the top 2 rows. Number 13, dropping from number 10 last week, is Pittsburgh. Now, on the upside, they've got Malkin back. On the downside, they lost that game against the Oilers today. and we'll see just how things work out for them going forward. But for me, probably a bit of an adjustment is why they're down at 13, and yeah, we'll see where they end up over the next couple of weeks. Because again, once Malkin's back and he's firing on all cylinders, they could jump right back up into the top row. It could happen. Number 12, same spot as last week, Vegas. I didn't see anything. It's funny because I had Vegas bumped up at one point this week to a higher number. And then by the end of tonight's game, I'm like, nope, back to 12th with you. So Vegas, they're playing well enough to probably make the playoffs right now. But blowing two goal leads in the third period, 2 games in a row, that's concerning. And doing it at home is even more concerning. So for Vegas, there's some cleaning up they have to do. If they get that done, yeah, they're a playoff team. Absolutely. You look at that top 6, there's no reason they shouldn't be in the playoffs. You look at the top 4 on the blue line, now that Nate Schmidt's back, there's no reason they shouldn't be in the playoffs. But, I don't know. Blowing those leads, it kind of has me wondering, like, could Vegas have another November like they did 2 years ago, where they looked like a disaster, and then all of a sudden they came right back. So I was like, all right, they're an expansion team, and then back they came. I think the lowest they've ever been on a power rankings I've had is 18th. I think that was November 2 years ago. They were 18th. Number 11, moving up from number 15 last week, is St. Louis. St. Louis has been a nice little run. They're not winning games by a lot. They're not winning games in convincing fashion. I don't think we've seen the best of the Blues yet. And yet, they're tops in the Central. Right now, they are first in the Central Division. Honestly, I look at the standings this early in the year and I say, this is interesting. So the Blues, again, without Tarasenko, are first. So all the concern about Tarasenko, sometimes losing a star player can bring everybody else together, and you can see the emergence of somebody else. And in this case, Sammy Blais looks like he might be the guy who emerges as a goal scorer this season. I believe he's up to 5 already. So yeah, St. Louis, good week for them. Number 10, moving up from number 14 last week, is Arizona. Again, good game for them tonight, and that's an understatement when you look at what Darcy Kemper did. But they're making strides. They're going in the right direction. Arizona absolutely belongs in the top 10 this week. Seeing that win over Colorado, and yes, you can point out, well, look who Colorado's missing. Right, but they still beat Colorado. So I'm not going to take anything away from them for that. Number 9, dropping from number 7 last week, is Carolina. And I agonize over this. I go, yeah, but they just beat Detroit 7-3. And then in my brain I go, yeah, but Detroit's 31st on the board. And then look what they did against team number 25, New Jersey. So, you can look at it and say, well, New Jersey played a really good game, which they did. And Carolina in the third only managed 4 shots, which is also true. So for me, I could not have them in the top row right now. Do they end up getting back there? Yeah, probably. The lowest they've been on this board is 16. I don't see them ever getting back to that again. I think 9's a pretty good spot for them right now. Number 8, moving up from 16 last week. Now, last week, I said I wanted to see something big this week, and I did. I saw a Vancouver team go through California, which is always death. It doesn't matter how bad California is, it's always death. And they came out of there with 5 points in 3 games out of a possible 6. I don't know how far they can go. I don't know how much more they can work this, because we're starting to see injuries happening, and that happens with Vancouver every year. Whether it's travel or whether it's just Canuck luck, there's always injury problems with Vancouver. But right now things look pretty good. And I am really kind of feeling good about where Vancouver's at, and the superstars playing like superstars. As long as Pettersson and Besser stay healthy, Besser's got to stop getting hurt every game. It's making us nervous. But as long as they're healthy, this team can go pretty far. So keep in mind that I am somebody who has tickets to, including the game I've already seen, I have tickets to 6 Canucks games this year. I've never attended more than 2 with tickets I bought for myself in any given season. I am very optimistic about this year. I think this is going to be a big year, but I didn't necessarily think playoffs. I just figured they'd be entertaining. They'd score more goals. I didn't realize the goals against would go down by as much as they did. Tyler Myers has been great. and that the goaltending would be just as good as it's been. Like, neither Demko nor Markstrom have shown any signs of stress, fatigue, anything. They've been great. Even though Markstrom's clearly dealing with something going on at home, he is still playing very, very well. There's not much that I can say negative about Vancouver other than stop allowing shorthanded goals, please. Number 7, dropping one spot from last week, is Edmonton. Edmonton's tricky. You can look at Edmonton and say they've won 10 out of their first 15. This is the first time they've done it since '86. Or you can say, yeah, but they've had trouble scoring in their last half a dozen games, so they're not playing particularly well. You could look at today's game and say, well, yeah, but Smith stole that for them. So there will be some of that. But for me, Edmonton, 10 wins in 15 games, that's pretty good. And other than the stunning defeat they had against Detroit, I can't say that I hold a whole lot against them over the last little while. And yeah, for me, the Oilers are still top row. Number 6, this one I agonized over. I dropped them 3 spots from last week, Buffalo. I don't want to be too reactionary with Buffalo. I don't want to look at last night's result against the Capitals and tonight's against the Islanders and say, that's it, Buffalo's dead. Because notice, the Islanders and Washington are not on the board yet. So they lost to teams that are playing really, really well. So I don't want to overreact with Buffalo and bump them down too much. But to be honest, I had considered dropping them down as low as 9th, dropping Carolina as low as 10th, having Arizona 9th, having Edmonton up as high as 6th, and Vancouver potentially 7th or 6th. Because I was having a hard time figuring between Edmonton and Vancouver, and in the end I said, no, I'll leave Edmonton where they are, and I will give Buffalo another week. So going over to Sweden, Buffalo and Tampa, if one of them loses both games, if Buffalo loses both, they probably fall out of the top row. If Tampa loses both, they'll end up down here. If each of them wins a game, odds are Buffalo will probably drop anyways because somebody behind them will probably push them out. Could be St. Louis, could be Arizona, could be Vancouver, and it could be Edmonton. So things could move around a lot over the next week in the top row. People who skip to the end aren't going to hear that spiel either. They're just going to get mad. So when you see people in the comment section getting all mad over where a team is after I've explained it like this, go ahead and tell them he explains it. You can even put in the timestamp. He explains it at. Because I explain these things. Number 5, dropping from number 1 last week, and I didn't want to be too reactionary with Colorado either. But at the same time, I can't justify Colorado being number 1, clearly. And yet I can't justify bumping Colorado down into here and having some crazy shift. Because if they go and they win 3 games this week, I'd have to bump them right back up. So 5 for me is good. I think that's about the right spot for them. The lowest they've been this year is 11. That's where they were to start the season. Then they jumped to 6, and then of course right to number 1. They're not number 1 right now, and yes, it is because of their injuries. Their injuries are it's glaring weakness in that lineup. So I don't think there's many teams that could handle losing 2/3 of their top line. I don't think there's very many of them out there. And for Colorado, it'll be interesting to see what happens until those guys return. Number 4, same spot as last week, Nashville. The Predators, you can look at their last 2 results against the Rangers and against the Flames and say, they're kind of losing it. I'm not thinking that yet. So, yeah, they're 0-1-1 in their last 2. The Flames game, I don't know how you lose that one, so I'll kind of take that and say, all right, grain of salt on that one. This is where the board's different now from the way it used to be. It used to be they lose that game, they drop. And that's just the rule. They just drop. No. We'll see how they do this week. They're in an interesting position, too, because with Nashville, Colorado, and Buffalo, all 3 of these teams are in danger of falling into this bottom row, or into the second row, I should say, from the top row. And for St. Louis, Arizona, and Vancouver, these teams are wanting into that top row. So these guys have to show me something this week, or 1, 2, or 3 of them could all end up in that next row down. That's just, yeah. And then people get mad when that happens or when it doesn't. So there will definitely be people who say, oh, should have bumped him down already. No, not yet. Number 3, moving up from number 9 last week, are Islander fans. I'm not sure why Islander fans think I don't like them. Same as Nashville fans, but that's a whole other topic. I'm not sure why Islander fans think I don't like the Islanders. I started this season, in the preseason, I had the Islanders at 13. And I had people telling me that's too high. The Islanders aren't going to be a good team this year. Then the Islanders lost games the first week, and I moved them up to 11. Then they lost some games, and then I had to bump them down to 19. Then they went on this huge winning streak. They went to 15 at the start of it. They went to 9 last week during the winning streak, and now this week they're at 3. Power rankings should never move rapidly. Like, you shouldn't see, like, oh, Colorado lost these guys. Well, they're down here. That shouldn't happen. I know there's websites that do that kind of thing, and I think it makes them look crazy. To me, it means the power rankings don't mean anything. When they move around that much, they mean absolutely nothing. So I try, even at this, early part of the season, not to do that, not to be that reactionary, because again, you'll see a team drop by 10 and rise by 8 and drop by 6, and then what's the point? So for these guys, they move up by 6 because they're on a 9-game winning streak, and they look really, really good doing it. Now, allowing more shots than you're getting, that makes me a little nervous. I don't know how long they can play this playoff style without wearing out, and that's what it feels like. It feels like they're playing playoff games right now. So we'll see how long Islanders can keep it up, but it looks pretty good for them. So number 2, I've got Washington at number 2, and I've got Boston at number 1. Boston has lost 1 game in regulation. I will do everything I can not to have Boston in number 1. I agonized about this last year when they went to a number 1 spot. I agonized about it the year before as well. For the Capitals, they were number 1 on this board the first 2 weeks. The preseason, after the preseason, and then after the first week. And I said I thought the Capitals were playing the best hockey coming out of preseason. I thought the Capitals were going to have a huge year. And I kind of got slagged after Washington lost some leads. Washington, since then, and they dropped to number 11 after that first week. They went back up to 6, they went back up to 5, and now they're back up to 2. Washington is playing some amazing hockey. So is Boston. The difference is, for Washington, it feels like they don't need Ovechkin to get it done. Boston, it feels like a lot of it's the first line, but they've only lost 1 in regulation. So when Colorado had its injury problem and started losing games, and Colorado dropped out of first, Boston took that spot. And as long as they're not losing games, they're up at number 1. So the Capitals are the closest to knocking them off, although the Islanders aren't that far off either. And we'll see how long these teams can keep it up. So for people following along at home, that's Atlantic, Metro, Metro, Central, Central, Atlantic, Pacific shows up at 7. But people will point out, and rightfully so, Vancouver at 8 is amazing because after the first week of the NHL season, I had them at 29. They went 29 to 21 to 18 to 16 to 8. They are rocketing up this board. And next week, they may very well find themselves in the top 7. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as always. And people always do. The power rankings are like that. And all the downvoting that goes on and all that wonderful stuff. But again, if you're going to complain about where anybody is on this board, I explain it all the way through. Why teams are where they are. And I have no problem explaining it when I do the video. But when I'm being asked to explain something I've already explained afterwards, it's like having kids. The internet's like a lot like having kids. I already explained that. But why do I have to do this? I just told you why you have to do it. Now, I've got 20 plus years of experience with dealing with kids, so maybe I'm meant to be a YouTuber for that reason. Anyways, let me know your thoughts. Again, hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Another crazy Saturday night. Like I said, we're over 15% of the way through the season. That's kind of exciting too. The big night is 2 weeks from tonight. There's 15 games in the NHL, so that'll be crazy. But tonight was pretty crazy too. And this is where the power rankings are after tonight's games. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. The channel's very near 126,000 subscribers, and I'm anxious for that. I think they did a purge on subscriptions this week, so make sure that you're still subscribed to the channel if you're watching this, because I don't know, when they do these kinds of purge things, very often people will get unsubscribed and they don't realize it. So make sure about that. But thank you guys again. I will talk to you again very soon.